Hoyoverse has created a problem, and it's something I haven't really seen anybody talking about. It's also been a while since I made a video just chatting about issues I see in the space, so I figured now is as good a time as any. You might be wondering why I'm sitting on the ZZZ screen. Well, that's because a while after the beta ended, I still had access. So I thought it'd be funny to use ZZZ footage of the beta right before the game comes out. But they finally pulled the plug, and I thought it was pretty funny that I was stupid enough to think that they hadn't less than a week before launch. But that's just me. I do something stupid, I make a mistake, I acknowledge it. There's no shame in that, and I wish more people understood that very basic human principle. Keep that in mind as we move on. Obviously, I'm not going to sit on this screen the entire video, so I'll use something else that's equally apropos to the video. Footage of the 4.7 Abyss. You see, since my protest video back in February, I've been free to play. I still haven't changed my name and description in game. I was considering breaking that in a few days if I like the new endgame. Regardless, I think the new endgame is good for the game, and I think Hoyo deserves at least some kudos for going back on saying they wouldn't add new endgame like Abyss. By the way, I really don't get the cope of saying they didn't backpedal, it's not like Abyss. Oh, silly me, it's not like Abyss. It's like the teapot and TCG. My mistake. How could I have been so blind? The backpedaling here is good. It's commendable even. You don't need to white knight for them when they finally did the right thing. You think you're defending them, but what you're really doing is arguing that they shouldn't acknowledge when they fuck up. The 2020s are wild, man. How is owning a mistake worse than making one in the first place? I do not get it. Companies understand money, first and foremost, at all times. They do something bad, they lose money. They learn not to do it again. They do something good, they gain money, they learn to do that again. It's classical conditioning of Skinner's pigeons if they were explicitly gold diggers. I saw them doing something bad and I stopped giving them money. I see them do something good, I might give them money because I want them to continue that behavior. However, after the 4.7 Abyss drop, I started to reconsider that. Now, I personally didn't have too much trouble with this Abyss, but a lot of people, particularly content creators, have gone on record saying this was the hardest Abyss ever. You might be surprised to hear this after my initial comment about the Abyss, but I think they're right. This is the hardest Abyss we've gotten, at least since I've started playing. Normally, if I want to make a video showing 10 plus teams that can destroy Abyss, I can do that. I cannot do that with this Abyss. The teams you're seeing here are the only teams I can clear with that aren't using the few C3R1 characters I've got. And that's a problem. Prior to most of 4.4 and 4.5, when I was actively protesting the game, I had been a welcome Battle Pass player, not missed a day of logins, and gotten the double reward top-ups in 2.0, 3.0, and 4.0. So, I had a solid 2 years of consistently doing all the content the game had to offer, and had spent a decent chunk of change. I looked at Welcome and Battle Pass like a subscription for a game like WoW that I'd be playing if I wasn't playing Genshin. So, there's that, but for the top-ups, I'm a sucker for half-off sales. It's my weakness. That's a free 5-star worth of primos I'd be leaving on the table. Of course I'm going to take that. I'm stupid. It's incredibly stupid of me. You want me to say it's not stupid, and no, I'm not going to. It's stupid. I can sometimes be stupid just like everyone else. Yes, we are all stupid. That's all to say though, that I've got a pretty strong and diverse account. And I know the game pretty damn well too. And I'm fucking stumped as to what I was supposed to have done if I didn't have certain characters. I hear y'all saying, well, you can always just use different teams for different chambers. Bruh, if you have two teams that can carry you through this 12-1, they can carry you through the other chambers. Besides, I've always hated that advice because it ignores the fact that you'll have to play through with teams that are terrible in certain chambers. That's fucking miserable. You think I want to spend 3 or more minutes suffering through a chamber a team is bad in just so I can get a sweaty time in a chamber they are good in? Fuck that. No. But I digress. But Abyss Hard isn't the problem. The problem at least is that it's prohibitive. Don't have certain characters, tough shit. And guess you can't play the only replayable content in the game for the entire month. Now, we have Imaginarium Theater on the horizon. Imaginarium Theater. There we go. As many of you have already pointed out, it's also inherently prohibitive. Don't have enough characters of these elements, or the ones you do have aren't good at this specific type of content? Tough shit. Should have pulled. We're singing the same thing in HSR. Oh, you aren't doing super great? Get fucked. And look, I got my Firefly. I'm a 90s kid. If you think I and every other femme-attracted person wasn't brainwashed by early 2000 movies into having a thing for the girl next door who isn't like other girls, you're stupid or lying. Let me tell you, I don't like playing HSR. I treat it like Tectone treats Genshin. Now, I'm fine with logging in, playing the main story, and logging out until the next version update drops. But I grinded like hell to get enough Jades for Robin and Firefly, despite how much I really didn't want to. And my god, was I pissed when I realized there was no skip button when I was grinding through content I did not want to do. How the fuck no one called out HSR players for complaining Genshin doesn't have a skip button when their game doesn't? This can't be real life. But that's not how a video game should be. I feel like the community gets so laser focused on the gacha and rewards that they forget that the reason these games got as big as they are is because they're actually good video games at their core. And a video game should be accessible. It should be fair. There shouldn't be paywalls once you've got the game. The gacha space is the only space on the internet where I could say that and the audience would not only not think that's a common sense take, but actually rage at the idea of it. So it's more than a little concerning to see Hoyo gatekeeping players from the content in their games when, up until now, the only requirement to complete the content was to just play the game like you would any other video game. Some content takes more grinding to get strong enough to clear, just like any other RPG or ARPG, but you can clear it if you put in the time. Related but not really related note, I think it's hilarious to see people bitching about getting damage percent pieces in WoWa, considering most of them are coming from Hoyo games where you typically have to grind for weeks to get one. But bruh, the game's been out a month, calm down. The endgame is designed for players that have reached the endgame, which none of you have done. So, Hoyo's 2 biggest games are now making their content prohibitive for players that don't have certain characters. And now we have ZZZ on the horizon. And I'll be real with you, I wasn't feeling it during the beta. The only thing that kept me playing was that the way Grace looks at the camera when you load into a level makes me feel a certain way. But during the protest, I got a lot of recommendations for games to play instead of Genshin, like Aethergazer, PGR, and Snowbreak, and I didn't like them. Playing the beta for ZZZ was the same feel as those games. There's one level, you've got missions. That one level has sections of it cornered off to make it seem like each mission is different. You complete the mission, you do a lot of menuing, only ZZZ actually has a budget plus a TV mechanic that prevents you from doing the only fun part of the game. If they just did away with the TV BS or just made it an optional puzzle you could do while on a mission, it would be the best of any of those games by far. But I'm not into them in the first place. I got a little off track there, but I figure some people might want my opinion, so there you go. Here's the point. While I can't confirm Hoyo has ever said this, the general consensus I've seen from players since the rebrand in 2022 and the launch of HSR in 2023 is that Hoyo wants players to only play their games. First, let's relate that to our previous problem. The strategy is essentially what the lotto industry does. They try to get people to buy different tickets to see which one they like the best, and hopefully buying that ticket becomes a habit. They're all presented as different games, but the point of all of them at the end of the day is to gamble. The game doesn't matter. Hoyo got where they are today by putting out games where the game part does matter. That's what they owe their success to. Full stop. If their games didn't appeal to players that play traditional video games, they likely wouldn't be any more successful than any other gacha developer. But adopting that lotto strategy of trying all the bait to see which works completely undermines that. At that point, the games stop mattering and they no longer have a reason to improve them. Not only is that terrible for the games and the players, I don't even think it'll work. Here's why. Since Wuthering Waves have dropped, I can't find the motivation to play any of the games. And I'm not the only one. I'm logging in, I'm doing my dailies, but I haven't done the Siege Queen story quest or most of Chinyu Vale in Genshin. I haven't done the 2.3 Honkai Star Rail quest, and my quest log is immense. And need I remind you, for the story quest in Honkai Star Rail is the main reason why I even have the game installed. And now I haven't even done the 1.1 quest in Wuba. Like I mentioned, I'm not the only one. You've probably seen at least one content creator put out a video talking about the dilemma they're facing right now. They can't choose. And that's bad for developers. It works in Lotto because you can buy 10 different tickets at once while holding up the line at a gas station. The barrier to entry is entirely monetary, but video games have an additional barrier to entry: time. Every second you spend playing a game is a second you aren't playing another game. For free-to-play games, because of sunk cost fallacy, you'll want players to spend as much time as possible in your game to feel like they need to spend to make that time worth it. If your players are spending less time in one game because they need to make time for another game, they're less likely to spend in either. Not only that, but it also butts heads with our innate biases. Choice overload or decision paralysis causes consumers to be less satisfied with their choices. If you feel compelled to choose between 4 things because you only have time for maybe 1 or 2, in this case, Zenless Zone Zero, Honkai Star Rail, Genshin, and Wuthering Waves, and you want to play all of them, you're likely to feel dissatisfied with whatever choice you made. This is called the paradox of choice. This is peer-reviewed shit that started with psychologist Sheena Iyengar and Mark Lepper back in 2000. It's because of this that it's often more beneficial to both consumer and company to present less choices. The consumer is more satisfied with their decision and thus more likely to make it again. And if the consumer makes the same choice again, the company makes more money. So, at least in my opinion, it would be more beneficial to Hoyoverse and its players for them to focus on making their games better for the specific audiences those games have than to just throw everything at the wall and hope that prohibitive gameplay features that encourage players to spend in order to participate in them stick. Whether they realize it or not, all it really does is make players resentful that you gave them an ultimatum of which game to choose. If you make the game satisfying to play, we'll spend. That's why we spent in the first place. We all have stupid monkey brains that are like, I spend a lot of time playing this, therefore it must be worth my money. So, please, for everyone's sake, Hoyo, abandon this strategy. I know people like to think that they know what type of audience each of these games have, but the only people that really know are you. You have the data, and you obviously listen to feedback because you put things Genshin players have been begging for in HSR. That didn't happen by accident, and HSR wasn't around for you to get the feedback from them. So if the feedback you get is good for the audience, your data tells you the game has, just fucking do it. And for the love of God, I know the product in Genshin is C0, but if you're going to double down on that and make choices that make the players that, God bless them, vertically invested instead of horizontally invested, actively regret their choice to do that, you could at least put out trailers for each new version of Abyss and Imaginarium Theater and tell your sponsored creators to stop pushing for constellations and signature weapons because they are fucking useless and your in-game actively discourages that kind of investment. Bye.